Hi guys, nowadays the general level of oral expression is declining non-stop, probably because of the excessive use of social media and the lack of real social interaction. Notice how people speak slowly, with hesitations and unclear sentences. They can't even project their ideas into someone else's mind. If you are well spoken, you actually have a superpower. It's gonna help you whether you're trying to seduce a girl on a date, or you're speaking to your future boss and trying to get a new job, or you're just pitching a project. In short, it's a skill that you must have. And today, I'll list the 5 most common big mistakes that people make when speaking. And then I'm gonna explain to you how to get rid of them so that you speak better than 99% of people. So let's get started. The first big mistake that people make when speaking is to use verbal tics, to have verbal tics. In English, the most common ones are like, I mean, and you know. But for some people, in some cases, it's anyways, whatever, and actually, or really also sometimes. The rule is simple. If a word doesn't serve any purpose and doesn't help developing the meaning of the sentence, don't say it. It destroys your charisma and it makes you look less intelligent. In fact, verbal tics are a perfect example of how the way you speak impacts the way people see you. Because, for example, if you see a handsome dude, well dressed, good looking, he looks in shape, he looks confident, you go talk to him and he answers, well, like it's kind of like it's done. His charisma is completely destroyed, completely killed, just because he uses excessive verbal tics. How to get rid of them? Well, the first step is to be aware that you have verbal tics. So, for example, even me, English isn't my first language, and still sometimes I use the same words I use like 3 times in the same sentence. That's horrible. So that's the first step. The second step is to actively practice to reduce them. So when you speak, you're mindful of it and you try to reduce verbal tics. It makes your communication much clearer and much more impactful. Sometimes the verbal tics can be ums and ahs, but in my opinion, ums and ahs are more hesitations than verbal tics, which leads me to my next point, the next big mistake that people make when speaking, and it's hesitating too much, especially using ums and ahs. Guys, you have to realize that ums and ahs are completely killing your charisma. They distract your audience and they interrupt the flow of your speech. The human brain is fast. It's supposed to be really quick, to be sharp. You have a question, you give the answer. If you listen to a podcast and the guy always uses ums and ahs and always hesitates, you will think, well, this guy is unprepared, he's not confident. You will associate negative thoughts, negative traits about this man. Whereas if you've watched the Tate brothers, you've probably noticed that their podcasts, firstly, are really famous, they get millions of views, but also that people really like them because they're really captivating, they're succinct, they are sharp, and the fact that they almost never hesitate has a lot to do with it because it makes them look more straightforward. Now, of course, occasionally you may make a mistake, you may hesitate a little bit because you get asked a particularly difficult question and you don't have immediately the answer. But in that case, what I recommend you to do is to actually take a real pause without speaking for a few seconds. It's not going to kill anybody. But what you can also do is to reformulate or repeat the question. That technique is used by a lot of politicians when debating, but you can use it even if you're not debating and simply speaking with your friends, because by repeating the question, it makes you understand it better, so your answer is more accurate, more precise. Another way to be precise is to use the right words. And that leads me to the next big mistake, which is having a poor vocabulary. Using a limited or inappropriate vocabulary makes it difficult to convey your ideas effectively and it reduces your credibility. If you rely on vague and overly simplistic words, it leads to misunderstandings and it weakens your arguments. Plus, if always you use the same terms like everyone else, you're just doing like the crowd, you're a sheep, you don't look confident at all. On the other hand, if you use the right words, if you expand your vocabulary through reading, through practice and learning, you express yourself more precisely and persuasively. If you speak to a dude and the guy uses clear and specific words, not too fancy of course, but well chosen terms, it looks like the guy knows exactly what he's talking about. You will start to think that the guy is an expert. Besides, he has a lot of chances to stand out from the crowd and from the people that seem to use only 30 words. Therefore, by having a large vocabulary and forcing yourself to use a wide amount of terms, it makes you look more original and more intelligent. We've talked about the verbal aspects of speaking. The first three mistakes were related to the verbal, but the nonverbal is also crucial. Jordan Belfort, in his book The Way of the Wolf, says that communication is 90% nonverbal and only 10% verbal. Now, I don't think that it's that extreme and that's precise, but the gist, the main idea here is that the nonverbal is also crucial for communication. And I totally agree with that. And that's why the next big mistake that people make is not using body language. Good posture and purposeful gestures enhance your message and make you appear more confident and more engaged. So every time you speak, chest up, head up, carry yourself like you're the man and people will start to think that you're the man. Besides, positive body language reinforces your communication. For instance, Kevin Hart uses a real expressive delivery and overreacts a lot. Now, you don't need to go that far, but it shows us the importance of the non-verbal. On the opposite side of the spectrum, you have Mark Zuckerberg, who is often rigid, like a robot, and not expressive at all. You don't want to be like that. I've talked about this in the previous video about storytelling. I invite you to go watch it if you haven't already. But in short, use the space you have, talk with your hands. If you can stand up, then stand up. It makes your words more concrete, more real, and people can relate. They can reproduce the scenes in their head. And finally, the last big mistake that people make is the lack of eye contact. Failing to make eye contact makes a speaker appear disengaged and unreliable, while good eye contact helps build connection with your audience and it conveys sincerity and confidence. It's crazy the amount of people that are talking to you, specifically to you, but are staring at their feet or looking on the side, looking at the wall, but not at you. Now sure, don't maintain an eye contact for too long. You're just gonna seem crazy. But a 3 to 5 seconds eye contact and then you break it by looking at the side and then you repeat it, it's perfectly fine. In any case, do not look at your feet the whole conversation. To sum up quickly, the first mistake that you need to avoid is to use verbal tics. The second one is to hesitate too much, especially using ums and ahs. The third one is to use a limited vocabulary. The fourth one is not using body language and gestures to enhance your message. And the fifth one, the last one, is the lack of eye contact. Now, if you want to get rid of them, you have to find an opportunity to record yourself while speaking in front of a group of people, and then you watch it. This way you make your own feedback, your own analyze about yourself. This advice is given by Andrew Tate. He says that the most important if you want to enhance your communication skills is to analyze yourself. Feedback can also be obtained by asking to well-spoken people you know in your entourage how to enhance your communication. Or you can analyze well-spoken people on the internet. I've talked about Andrew Tate, but there's also Andrew Elliott, Justin Waller, or even Sam Sulek. I find that sometimes Sam Sulek is well-spoken. Now, the best one in this area are really the Tate brothers. They're the best. Now, as I said earlier, English isn't my first language, so if you want to help me, you can put in the comments the mistakes I've made, and this way I'll try to enhance my communication also. If you enjoyed the video, you can leave a comment, leave a like, and you can subscribe to my channel also, and I see you next time.